I've always really liked the character of Victor Zsasz, or Mr. Zsasz as he's often referred to as. Despite that though, I've barely talked about him on the channel. In fact, I think I've only talked about him once, very briefly, in my Nightfall review. I didn't even include him on my top 20 Bat villains list. I actually wanted to, but a top 20 can only fit 20, and I didn't want to kick anyone off the list. Well, now I will finally be talking about Zsasz at great length, in his very own video no less. It's certainly been a long time coming. Now, Zsasz hasn't appeared in very many stories, and the few there are pretty much all great. I can't think of any outright bad Zsasz story. So this list was actually very easy to make. I knew immediately which ones to pick, and it was just then a matter of putting them in the order that I prefer. And without further ado, let's get to the list. Number 5. Streets of Gotham. Published between 2009 and 2011. Zsasz's appearances were sprinkled throughout the first 12 or so issues of this series. All of these issues in question were written by Paul Dini and penciled by Dustin Nguyen. So in this series, Zsasz appears first when rescuing Black Mask from a deranged Firefly. As a thank you, the Mask gives Zsasz a shit ton of cash and tells him to do with it whatever he wants. Dream big and fulfill your darkest desires, is the Mask's advice. Zsasz takes this advice to heart and buys an entire abattoir for himself, a slaughterhouse. Being the sick fuck that he is, Zsasz sets up this abattoir as an arena for gladiator fights. Brutal fights to the death. And the participants of these fights are orphaned kids that he has had kidnapped off the streets. The last standing survivor will face Zsasz himself. It's only the ones who manage to defeat him who will face release and get their freedom. Of course, no one is able to do that. Mr. Zsasz is often said to be the most evil and despicable villain in the Batman Rogues Gallery, and it is very possible that he is. This series certainly argues in favor of that claim. I don't think Zsasz has ever been more despicable than he was in Streets of Gotham, forcing kids to fight each other to the death, all for his own amusement. You don't get more nasty than that. A terrifying tale and also a great portrayal of Zsasz. A really nice touch to the character's portrayal are his visions. He imagines every person he encounters dead, brutally murdered by his hand, even his own allies like Black Mask. These are his desires, I assume. Desires he sometimes has to suppress when it's simply not appropriate to murder everyone in the room. Number 4. Victims, from Detective Comics 815 and 816, published in 2006. This two-parter was written by Shane McCarthy and penciled by Cliff Chiang. So in this one, Zsasz escapes from Arkham once again and begins a new killing spree. One of his victims is carrying an invitation to a police charity ball, and considering he won't be using it, Zsasz decides to go in his place. It just so happens that Bruce Wayne and his butler Alfred are attending as well, and through bizarre coincidence or bad luck, Zsasz happens to choose Alfred as his victim. However, due to the quick actions of his employer / the Batman, Alfred's life is saved. The only victim of Zsasz to survive. He doesn't know that though, and has already carved a tally for Alfred into his flesh. Meanwhile, he continues his killing spree, and Bruce, growing desperate, eventually realizes there is only one way to stop the demented murderer. He must use Alfred as bait. Bruce knows that if Zsasz learns of Alfred's survival, he'll return to finish the deed, which will serve as a perfect opportunity for the Batman to nab him. So yeah, Zsasz picking Alfred to slice up out of all of those people at the police ball is a little far-fetched. But disregarding that, this story is actually great. It explores a rare subject that we never really seen anywhere else. Zsasz's obsession with the tally marks. If he's card one in, then he's card one in. There's no going back. That person has to be dead. Otherwise Zsasz's whole world will fall apart. The tallies don't lie after all. It's also a great Bruce and Alfred story, despite the fact Bruce uses him as bait, and it features some of the best moments we've ever seen between the two. Number 3. The Last Arkham, from Shadow of the Bat issues 1 to 4, published in 1992. This four-parter was written by Alan Grant and penciled by Norm Breyfogle. It's actually the very first Victor Zsasz story ever made. It features the first appearance of Jeremiah Arkham as well, and the story is about Arkham Asylum being rebuilt as a more modern, more secure structure. Zsasz is introduced as one of the many inmates of Arkham, an incredibly dangerous serial killer who requires a strict security detail around him at all times. Yet despite that, it appears that Zsasz is continuously escaping from Arkham and resuming his killings on the outside. How is this happening? Ruling out a copycat killer, Batman suspects that Jeremiah Arkham himself must be his accomplice. The good doctor must be aiding Zsasz's escapes and then covering them up. Basically what William Wickman does for the Hooligan. Wonder how many got that reference. Anyway, the only way for Batman to be sure is for him to get himself committed to Arkham and do his investigation from the inside. The first Zsasz story was quite grand and ambitious, a four-parter about Arkham Asylum itself. It wasn't just another small random case for Batman, like a lot of Bat-villain debuts were. It was something special. It's not really my favorite Arkham story though. I honestly don't know which one is, but I do like it quite a bit. Zsasz is definitely the best part about it though. Here he was also portrayed as being far smarter than in later stories, a master manipulator who's able to trick anyone into doing what he wants, without them even realizing it. Being so intelligent and extremely deadly, I suspect he was at least somewhat based on Hannibal Lecter from Silence of the Lambs, which came out a year prior. He was truly a force to be reckoned with. It's almost a shame this mastermind depiction of Zsasz never appeared again. I am glad they dropped his tailcoat and top hat though. Not every Bat-villain needs to be a fancy dresser. Number 2. The First Cut is the Deepest, from the Batman Chronicles issue 3, published in 1996. This short little tale was written by Alan Grant and penciled by Jennifer Graves. In it, Zsasz is interviewed by his Arkham doctor, and we are thus told his origin for the first time. As it turns out, unlike Harvey Dent or Waylon Jones, Victor Zsasz's childhood was actually perfect. Loving parents who also happened to be rich. There was nothing missing from Zsasz's younger days. Then, when he was in his 20s, his parents passed away. This sent him into a depression, and he began to gamble to distract himself from his heartbreak. He quickly grew more reckless with his gambling, and eventually lost it all in a poker game to the Penguin. Broke and destitute, Zsasz realized he had nothing left to live for. His life was completely empty. He'd done it all and seen it all, and now he'd lost it all. What else was there for him in life? So he decided to take his life. As he was about to jump from a bridge, he was however interrupted by a mugger. While struggling with this crook, Zsasz somehow found that will to live again. As he gained the upper hand on the mugger, he looked into his eyes, and saw nothing but emptiness, a robot, a zombie. He realized that everyone else was just like him, empty, pointless beings, living meaningless lives. They were all practically begging for him to help them end their pointless existences. And so Zsasz decided to do. Finally, he had found a purpose in life. The tallies carved into his skin serve as a reminder that he too is just an empty human being though, just like his victims. A great origin and explanation for the character's philosophy. I actually like the fact that his upbringing was perfect, yet he became a monster anyway. In fact, his upbringing being so perfect is probably why he became a monster. He never had to struggle, never had to work, never had to worry. No wonder he feels so empty. He never really had anything to live for to begin with. It's actually quite a sad story, and the only one where Zsasz is somewhat sympathetic. His philosophy is kinda accurate too. Many people, especially in modern developed countries, do live kinda pointless lives, just filling up their time with meaningless activities, like partying, traveling, watching movies. We kinda are zombies. Zsasz's origin is in other words a statement about modern civilization, which is quite bold for a little comic like this. And now for the greatest Mr. Zsasz story ever told, in my opinion. Number 1, Red Slash, from Batman 493, published in 1993. It was written by Doug Mensch and penciled by Norm Breyfogle. This was the character's second appearance, and a part of Nightfall. Nightfall is of course the arc where Bane let loose all the inmates of Arkham in a ploy to break the Bat. One of these inmates was Mr. Zsasz. Following his escape, Zsasz breaks into the bait school for women, nice nod to Psycho, and takes a group of students hostage. He threatens the cops outside that he'll start killing the girls if the cops makes a move. It's naturally up to Batman to infiltrate the school and defuse the situation. So a pretty simple story. It's not necessarily better than any of the other comics on this list. It just happens to be my personal favorite. I'm a big fan of the Nightfall story arc, and this particular issue is one of my favorite parts of the event. I really like this speech Zsasz gives to Batman when the two finally confront each other. He taunts Batman, saying how they're both the same, predators stalking their prey from the shadows. He also claims that Batman enjoys the hunt as much as he does. Interesting points, and there is some truth to them as well. Despicable as he may be, Zsasz often makes a lot of sense. Or maybe I've just gone insane myself. Another thing I really like about this comic is the fact it feels like an homage to slasher flicks. The title and the Psycho reference are obvious clues, but overall I get slasher vibes from the entire story. The setting taking place at a school for women reminds me of Black Christmas, my favorite slasher flick, which featured a killer hiding out in a sorority house. A perfect early 90s Batman comic. And there you have it, the 5 greatest Mr. Zsasz stories, in my opinion. Tell me yours in the comments. After I've talked about a certain Mr. Richard Harrow from Boardwalk Empire, I've got plans to finally do a video on perhaps the most requested character this channel has ever seen. So stay tuned for that. And as always, remember, Arkham Asylum awaits you in the next video.